Hey all, so in today's video we'll be making a toast component and we'll be making 4 different variants. So one for success, one for error, one for warning, and one for info. We'll also be making, we'll be adding an option to have buttons, either 2 buttons or 1 secondary button or 1 primary button. We'll also be making a very short prototype, so to do a quick demo, we'll just have a toast fly in and then we'll add an option to dismiss it. So that's really it. Mainly the goal of this is just to have something fun to end the video and play with the Figma Smart Animate feature. And last but not least, I have to give credit to this person here, Patrick Marks. He's the inspiration for the for the toast component that we're building. So yeah, go check out his stuff. I'll link the link in the description. So to get started, I have a new Figma file here, and I did a little bit of prep work. So I chose the colors which I want to use, and I just have a color for black, which is not really black, more like dark grayish. Then I have a gray color, which is a little lighter, and I have a white color, which you can probably barely see. And then I have color for each status that I want, and I have kind of like the default solid color, and then I have a light color. And lastly, I also have a primary color. So the only thing I did is that I created ellipse, and I was just playing around with colors that I wanted, and then I renamed the layer, let's say red. So get your colors ready, and you can also rename them, or you can create your styles right away. So the reason I was not creating my styles right away is because there is a shortcut you can use with a plugin to do them all at the same time. You can select all your colors, then go to your plugins and search for styler. You're going to run it, and you're going to generate styles. So now you'll get all of these selection colors here, and it will be automatically generated for you. It's much faster than going through each color one by one and creating a style. Another thing I did is that I got myself some icons. So I have one for each status, and I also have an icon that I want to use for our close button. And these ones I just got from Phosphor Icons. So I'll link the link to this in the description as well. And you can either use this one or some other icon set, or you can even draw your own. The first thing we're going to do is create our icon set. And just for this tutorial, I am going to combine them all in one component set. Of course, if you have like 20 icons, you probably don't want to have one set for all of them. But because we just have 4 and they all are related and they all look similar as well, it kind of makes sense, and it's okay for them to be in one set. So I selected all of them, and I'm going to go over here and create a component set. And we will call this component status icon. And the property name is going to be status, and this one is going to be success, this one is info, this one is error, oh wait, no, this one is warning, and this one is error. And since we're not really going to be using these icons in any other use case here, we can go ahead and give them their respective colors. So this one is going to get a green color, this one is gonna be blue, this one's gonna be orange, and this one is gonna be red. So this is our icons. And now let's take care of this one. This one is going to be our close icon, close button. So actually we want to make sure it's has a lot of padding around it, because you don't want to just be trying to aim for 16 pixels and try to close the toast. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put it in auto layout, and it gives me some padding by default, but maybe I just want to have it fixed in this case, and maybe like 44 by 44, maybe 40 by 40. And I'll change this color to our black color. And the reason I'm using black that's not 100% black is that it does look harsher on the eyes when it's just pure black. And actually maybe I would just use the gray color for this. Okay, so that's going to be our close button, and we can just go ahead and create a component for this one. And one thing for the prototype purposes later on, I am going to give it 4 pixel border radius. This will just, when we do the hover state, we will want to have like a nice round edges, not sharp ones. Now we're going to return to our status icons, and if you take a look on our final toast components, you can see that in addition to just an icon, we have a little circle in the back, and I find it just makes the whole toast look much more sophisticated, and it looks like there is some movement even if we don't actually add any animation to the circle. It's just kind of there, but it looks much better. So we're not going to add that to the component itself, but we're going to just create these groups that we'll use later on. And I made an ellipse here, and then I'm going to give it 32 by 32 dimensions. And the first one is going to be success, so I'll give it a background, light background color. And we'll take an instance of the icon, bring it to the front, and then we can combine this. And so one thing that's important to keep in mind when you're playing with colors, it's good to take the time to find the ones that you really like, but then it's also important to test those colors to make sure that they have high contrast. Once you kind of find your first round of colors that you want to use, I recommend you go ahead and get this plugin called Contrast. So if you just search for it, it's going to pop up, and you can run it, and it's going to tell you whether or not this color works for your use case. So here I only want to use this for an icon, and you can see it passes for the icons. But then if I were to use it for the text and want it to be like AA compliant or AAA compliant, it would fail, and I would need to get a much darker color. And to be honest, when I first played around with these colors and got the ones that I liked, they were not, I think most of them were not compliant at all, and I really had to shift some of the solid colors and some of this light background colors to get the right contrast ratio. Now let's create the same groups for the rest of icons. So I'm going to make just 3 more circles, and we'll make them much smaller. And so from here, this one's going to be for the info, this one for alert, and this one for error. And we can take an instance of info. I'll just group them together. Make sure it's in the center. Then instance of warning. Same thing. And an instance of error. And I already tested these colors for contrast, but just make sure that you also test all of yours. And the orange one is always the most difficult one. And one little kind of life hack that you can use is when you are playing around with your colors and trying to make something darker, instead of playing with hacks and kind of trying to finagle around this color palette, one thing that I like to do is setting it in HSL, hue, saturation, lightness mode, and then you're just going to go to the lightness number, and if you want to go lighter, you increase it. If you want to go darker, you decrease it. And obviously the goal is to find that sweet spot that's compliant but not too dark. Now we're going to move on and start creating text layers. So we'll have two. We'll have a toast title, and then we'll have toast description, and we'll combine them together in auto layout. And for the toast title, we're going to make it black, and we'll also give it a semi-bold font weight, and this one will just remain regular font weight, and we'll make it gray. And we're also going to increase the font size to 16. Let's start with creating our success toast. So what we want to achieve here is that we want the icon to always be at the top, but then we also want these two text layers to be in a column, right one, the toast description being right below the toast title. So it's kind of tricky, because if we want these two to be aligned, then it means that if we use the auto layout, it's going to shift the toast description, or we would need to add some like weird spacing configuration, like padding, to move it over right under the toast title. So there are several options you can choose from, but the one that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the toast title and I'm going to wrap it in auto layout, and going to remove that. And we're going to give it a fixed height of 32, which matches the icon. And we're going to center it. And so this way we'll be able to both have our toast description right under the toast title, but then it will also be nice and centered with the icon. And now we can combine these two layers together. So why auto layout just for this, just for the text title? The reason is that I could definitely just take the text layer itself and be like, okay, I want this to be 32, so I can make the height 32 and center it. But what's ends up happening if, let's say, I have a toast title that's a little bit longer, and I start typing something, it pretty much keeps the width fixed as well, and that's not what we want. With auto layout though, we're able to keep the height fixed, but at the same time I can just keep on going with the toast title, and it's much more flexible. From here we can start making this look a little bit more like a toast component. We're going to give it a fill of white, which you can't currently see because our canvas is also white. So let's change that. And then we'll give it 16 pixel padding, probably 8 pixel border radius, and we'll also want to give it a shadow, so something fairly soft, and we'll add a little stroke as well. And again, this is going to be very, very subtle. Now we can add our close button as well. So one thing, we could definitely have it in the same auto layout structure, but I do find that it's a little bit too low, and I never like how that feels. I always want it to be like right in that top right corner. So what we're going to do for this one is that we'll do the absolute positioning. So I just click this button here, and I want it to always be on the right and on the top. Maybe I want it like a little offset. What happens here is that because it's absolute positioning, we do get this clashing of these two text layers. They're definitely getting a little bit too close. So one thing that we could do is give it a right padding of, let's say 56, maybe 40, and this way it can ensure that since the close button is always sticks to the right and top edge of the toast, and we have some padding here, like there will never be too close. Now let's adjust a little bit our toast description. So description can get kind of long, and we want to make sure that it's not too long, so we don't want something like this to happen, which could be a good idea. We can just give it a fixed width of let's say 312, and this way we can ensure that whatever it is that you put in here, it will start to wrap to the second line once it reaches that width. And looking at this two lines, it definitely feels a little bit too cramped, so we can increase the line height just to give it a little bit more space to breathe. We're now going to take a break from our toast for a little bit, and we're going to create the buttons that we will use as optional props. But before that, I'm just going to clean up the layers a little bit. I'm going to group the colors together, and from here I'm going to create a text layer, just say button, give it auto layout, 12 pixels vertical, 16 pixels horizontal padding, and for this one I'm going to use our fill of primary color, which is just, it's a little bit lighter than the info color that we're using here. And then we'll give this button a border radius of 8. For our fill, for our text color, we're going to do white. And again, if you look at this color, it's also not pure white. It's like just a little bit towards the gray side. And once again, it's better to have something that's not pure white, just like something that's not pure black, because it's less harsh on your eyes. And then we'll give this the maybe semi-bold for font weight. And again, we're not really doing much with buttons here, so that's pretty much it for our primary button. We're going to turn it into a component, call it a button, and now we would want to create a second variant, and this one is going to be a secondary. So first let's rename this property to variant, This one is primary, this one is secondary. And for our secondary one, we're going to have no fill. We'll add a stroke of gray, and our text will be gray as well. And maybe we'll drop this font weight to medium so it doesn't stand out too much. Now we can take our buttons and add them to our toast component. So I'm going to take an instance of a button. This one is going to be secondary. We'll group them together in auto layout and we'll just drop them in here. Right away you can tell that it's a little bit too close to the description. We are just going to give the buttons auto layout group a top padding, and let's do 12, and maybe the bottom will just we'll just do 8, something like that. And then for the frame itself, we're going to set it to fill the container, and we'll want the buttons to fill the container as well. And now you can see that the text is stuck to the left. So we're going to return to our button instance, and we're going to make sure that everything is nice and centered. At this point, we have all the elements we need to turn this into a toast component. So I'm going to rename this as toast and make a component. There are a couple more adjustments that I want to make. So first, the target size should be 44 by 44, not 40 by 40. So I'm going to increase the size, and once again I want it to be have maybe a little offset, so something like this. And now we can start adding some properties, some variants, and Boolean properties to this toast component. So first, we may not always want to have the buttons. Maybe we don't, most of the time we don't want to have any buttons with the toast. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create, I'm going to go to this layer section here, and I'm going to create a new component property. And this one is going to be just called actions, and I'll keep it true for now, but at the end, after we're done with this component, we'll set it to false, because again, we don't want to have buttons with the default version of the component. But then also sometimes maybe we just want to have one button, and sometimes it might be the primary button, and sometimes it might be the secondary button. So we're going to create two more properties, and this one is going to be called primary action. We'll set it to true. And this one is going to be called secondary action. We'll set it to true as well. So now we have three properties: actions, primary action, secondary action. And just for a second, let's take this actions and set it to false. And now we're going to grab an instance of the toast component. And as you can see, the actions, when the actions is turned off, we don't see properties for the primary or secondary actions. So it's nice, it doesn't get in our way. But once we turn them on, we can see that both of them are turned on. And we can either have a primary or secondary one. One little thing that's kind of off with this setup is that if you turn both of this off, you kind of remain with this empty space. But so you just kind of have to remember to turn the actions toggle off. But compared to other setups, I definitely prefer this one. It just feels easier overall to deal with. Okay, let's go back to our toast, and we'll set it to true. as we're working with other variants, I usually like to have everything turned down so that I can see if something goes wrong. Now we can start creating variants for the rest of the toasts. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a new variant, and I am going to do the property of status. This one is going to be success. This next one will make info. This one is going to be warning. And this one is going to be error. And the only thing that changes here is the icons. So I'll put this one in here, remove this one goes in here, and we'll take this one and put it right in here. And now that we finished our toast component, we can go ahead and set the actions property to false by default. And another thing that I always like to do with my component sets is adding auto layout and really just making sure that they're all nice and tidy. Okay, so the last thing that we have left to do is we're going to test our components, and it's usually a good idea to test with real use cases. So whatever your use case is, try to test it with those. I'm just going to test it with a few examples that I found when I was doing a test run for this component. And the one thing that we'll do after that is the prototype. Okay, so these 4 examples were the ones that I did before. And now I'm going to take an instance of the toast component that we just created and see whether or not I can successfully recreate all of these examples. So we're going to start with the success one, and for this one it's just very simple. We have a title and description, and we don't have any buttons. So it wraps to the second line as expected, and we'll make this, I don't know, medium, semi-bold. So that, oops. So that was our first experiment. Second one, we're going to do the error one. So the icon changes as expected, and we'll have actions, and we only want the secondary action. So one thing that I'm seeing here is that for some reason the order of actions flipped, and it's not really a big deal, but I like when everything is organized. So we'll have just the primary action here, and the title is going to say upload failed. Looks and we'll just reset it back to regular, and the button is going to say try again. Our next one is warning, so we'll set it to warning, and for this one we want the secondary action. This one is like your warning that storage is full. And the last one is an info, and it has both actions. So overall, we're able to successfully recreate all of the examples. There are some stylistic differences between the two, like some padding or the button height, but they all are small, and for the most part the component works exactly as we expect it to. The reason why this button is taller than this one is because when I was creating the button component, I just copied the text layer for description, which had 160% line height set to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our component. We're going to select the two text layers and set it back to auto. And now when I go back, I can see that my buttons are now the correct size. Another thing, I can see that this other component just had a little bit more spacing between the icon and the content, so that's something I can do as well. Just select all of this and increase it from 8 to 12. One last thing we have left to do is the prototype, but before then I'm just going to clean up our Figma file. So I'm going to remove these ones because we no longer need them. And I'm going to rename this page to components. Then I'll make another page called examples. I can just move these examples that we did here. And then for the components, we should just double check to make sure there is nothing extraneous here. And looks like it's just our colors, the icons, and the buttons. And this last page is going to be called prototype. I usually like to keep the prototype on a separate page. Okay, so from here what we're going to do is that we'll need to create a fake UI, kind of like a fake desktop. And I hope if you're working with this, again, in the context of your app, that you probably already have some built-out screens that you can test this out with. This is more just, again, for this tutorial so that we have some kind of visual. So I'm going to create something that resembles up header. And then let's say like a side navigation or something like that. And content. Okay, so that's our prototype frame. And from here, I'm going to take a copy of this example here. It could really be any example that you want. And I want to place it in the top right corner. But if you want to have different placement for your toasts, you can certainly do that. And from here, I don't want it to be like stuck all the way to the edge. So I'm just going to give it some space. So that's our first frame, and this is going to be our second frame. And so what I want to happen here is that I want the toast to come in from the top, and it doesn't mean that this frame is not going to have a toast component at all. It's still going to be here, but we're going to move it to the top and kind of like outside the frame view. So I'm going to modify this and just bring it like all the way out there. And as you can see, the toast is still inside this frame, but because we're clipping the content, you're not able to see it. So it's just kind of hangs there. And from here, what I'm going to do is for the prototype, I want it to appear after some sort of delay, kind of mimic how it would appear naturally. So I'm going to just set one overall link, and I'm going to set it to after delay. And let's just do like 1200 milliseconds, just so that we're actually able to see this happen when we test it out. And what we're going to do is, instead of it being instant, so let's see what it's going to look like now. So let's restart this. You see, it just appears instantly, and it's not a very great smooth experience. So what we're going to do is we're going to select this link, and instead of making it appear instantly, you can play around with all sorts of stuff. I'm just going to do Smart Animate, and first you can kind of set your own, like how you want it to be, like linear or is out. But one thing I like is that they also provide like a couple presets here. So we'll just choose one of those. Let's do the gentle one. And now you can go back to your prototype, restart it, and you see it's much smoother than if it were just set to instant. And you also get like a nice little bounce at the end. The next piece is we want to be able to dismiss our toast component, and for this prototype I'm going to dismiss it using the close button. And so what we're going to do, we will create a new frame, and we're going to, first we want to have, when you hover over the close button, we want to give some feedback. So our first link is going to be, when we hover over, we're going to move on to our third frame, and instead of being on click, it's going to be while hovering. And what we want to happen here is we want to give it some sort of background color. And this cover state is could be something that's just built into your component, but if you use it a lot, and if you want to make sure that everyone always uses consistent hover styles, please build this into your component. But here I'm just going to give it a fill just for this prototype when you're hovering over. And the last thing is that once you click, we want to dismiss it. So I'm going to reset this one back to white. And when we dismiss it, let's say we want it to go over to the side. So why not? Bring it to the side, and once again, it's still part of the frame, but it's not in the frame view. And now we'll add our link, which is going to be on click. And this one will do Smart Animate. And for this one, maybe we'll, instead of Smart Animate, we'll do like a dissolve. So sometimes when you're working with very little interactions, I find that Smart Animate can get like a little clunky. Okay, so let's test it out from the start. It comes in, then you hover over it, it gives you a nice background color, and the button is nice and big, and then you dismiss it. So that's about it for the toast component. I would say this component is definitely more intricate and has more like little things that we need to keep in mind when we're working with it than maybe some other components have. And it's kind of unexpected because it feels like such a small and like simple component, but it's a little more involved than that. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I will link the Figma link as well as like any other resources that I mentioned in this tutorial to the description of this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.